are no sure things in life, save for death, taxes, unless maybe if you're really, really rich, and Lane Kiffin leaving town just ahead of a posse of torches and pitchforks. Alabama's in the SEC championship game again. But is the Crimson Tide in the college football playoff? Alex Golesh has arrived on the plains. But is he the right man to lift Auburn out of this deep, dark depression the Tigers have experienced over the last 5 years? Lots of questions, very few answers. We'll see if we can find a few on this episode of Scarbo Knows. Hello everyone, I'm Kevin Skarbinski, aka Scarbo, coming to you live on December 1st, 2025, the first day of the last month of this very eventful year, and who knows what lies in store for us over the next 31 days. Thank you so much for watching, whether you're on the Sidelines.live network, courtesy of executive producer Brendan Martin, whether you're watching on YouTube. We thank you so much for that. And hey, give us a follow if you're there and if you haven't done that so far. We've grown tremendously since we launched this adventure back in March, and we've got so much more to come and so much more room to grow. But thank you for your support. Or if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, we appreciate you tuning in there as well. And we have to say a shout out to our sponsor, Money Management Services. They've been with us from the beginning. They are Birmingham's financial services firm. Whatever your needs are in that arena, whether it's retirement planning, whether it's tax advice, the Rice family is there for you. They are good friends of mine. They will take great care of you, and we'll hear from them later in the show. So let's get into it. No sure things. Now, we are not going to go down the path of so many in the college football industrial complex and completely ignore what happens on the field. Yes, we're going to talk about coaching searches. Yes, we're going to talk about who went where and why, who didn't go where and why, who won the coaching carousel, if there is such a thing, 24 hours after so many jobs got filled. There really isn't, but we'll have fun with it anyway. But we're not going to ignore the games, because once the games become secondary, and they are perilously close to that right now, then what are we even doing? What is college football about? I know money's the answer. What's the question? But if the games take a back seat and go backstage while we focus on vagabonds like Lane Kiffin changing jobs and leaving a playoff team behind, then we have lost the plot. We have not lost the plot here on Scarbo Knows. We are going to talk first and foremost about the best rivalry in college football, asterisk, every other year. You have to dub it that, because when Alabama and Auburn play in Tuscaloosa, the team that you expect to win does win. The home team walks away with a rather comfortable victory, and Alabama and Auburn go their separate ways. But when they play in Auburn, you expect the unexpected. When they play in Auburn, you expect something devilish to happen. You expect specters to rise from the grave, from the ashes that people have scattered from their loved ones on the turf at Jordan-Hare Stadium on Pat Dye Field. You just expect you expect to see things you've never seen, to hear things you've never heard. And that's kind of sort of what happened Saturday night. Alabama did win 27-20. It wasn't easy. It wasn't predictable, the journey that the Crimson Tide took to that outcome. Auburn, as we all expected, put up a great fight and had a chance to win late in the game. But they didn't, and we'll get into a couple of details, a couple of things that stood out to me about the 90th Iron Bowl. First of all, this is now the 6th straight victory for Alabama over Auburn. And if you don't think that's significant, you don't know anything about this rivalry. If you don't think that hurts and is hard to take for Auburn people, you've never lived in this state. That streak of 6 for the Crimson Tide now matches the 6 in a row that Auburn won from 2002 to 2007 under former Auburn coach and future Alabama governor Tommy Tuberville. So that distinction of having the second longest winning streak in this series, of course, number 1 is the 9 in a row that Alabama won under Bear Bryant from 1973 to 1981. But now there's a tie for the second longest streak. And Auburn has half of that tie and Alabama has the other. That has to hurt. It does hurt Auburn people. Maybe that explains why many of you were a little feisty with me on Twitter on Sunday night after we got the announcement that Auburn has a new coach in Alex Golesh, and I didn't jump on the float and join the parade. We're going to talk a little bit more about Auburn's new coach in a minute. But let's focus for a few more minutes on the Iron Bowl, on Alabama's 27-20 victory, on the 6th straight win in the series by the Crimson Tide. And they also made history. This is the 3rd straight time that Alabama has walked out of Jordan-Hare Stadium with a victory. That had never happened before. Nick Saban couldn't do it. Now, he was a part of this. He won the last 2 in 2021 and 2023 by the hair on his chinny chin chin. And Kalen DeBoer, well, he didn't have to sweat quite so much to get the 3rd straight victory by Alabama in an Iron Bowl in Auburn. The Auburn fans, as usual, showed up in force. They showed up with hope and belief and did everything in their power to will their team, their underdog team, their 5-6 team, their 1-6 at the time in the SEC team, to an upset victory that would have been extra delicious because it would have knocked Alabama out of the SEC championship game and out of the college football playoff. And how did Alabama respond in the most pressure that Kalen DeBoer has ever faced on a college football field? Yes, I said ever, and that includes the national championship game he coached with Washington. Because losing that game, there were no consequences. In fact, the consequence was he got the Alabama job shortly thereafter. Had they lost Saturday, there would have been serious consequences. Not that he would have been fired in the aftermath. Not that he would have left for Penn State to avoid the heat and get a fresh start. But he would have officially been on the hot seat going into next season, starting Saturday night when that game ended. So how did he respond to that pressure? Alabama went out and took a 17-0 lead. Alabama went out and ran the ball the way it hasn't run the ball against a Power 4 opponent all season long. And sadly and unfortunately, Jam Miller, who had his best game, got hurt. And we don't know yet his status for the SEC championship game. But Alabama played with confidence. Alabama played not afraid to lose, but confident that it could win. And Ty Simpson wasn't at his best until his best was required. Threw 3 touchdown passes to Isaiah Horton. Got a couple of field goals from Connor Talty. But in the biggest moments, Kalen DeBoer showed us the kind of stones you only find at Easter Island or maybe in the Grand Canyon. Because on 4th and 2 in the 4th quarter, after Auburn had mounted a great comeback, and listen, I got to apologize to Ashton Daniels. I made some snap judgments on Twitter. Shocking, right? Don't we all? Isn't that the purpose of Twitter? During the game, he played a little shaky at first, but he got better and better as the game went on. And he led a comeback for Auburn. And he put Auburn in position to tie the game in the 4th quarter and have a chance to win later in the game after Alabama took the lead. But there were 2 moments in that game that faced each head coach that told you a lot about both men. In the 2nd quarter, late 2nd quarter, Auburn is trailing 17-0. But Auburn puts together a drive thanks to a shanked Alabama punt They get down to 4th and goal at the 3-yard line. Now, earlier in that drive, DJ Durkin had showed some guts, and it was 4th and 5 from the Alabama 45. Went for it and got it. Ashton Daniels got it with his legs. So now they drive down. It's 4th and 3. You're trailing by 2 touchdowns and a field goal. You are the underdog. You have a losing record overall. You have a losing record in the conference. You are going nowhere except perhaps to a minor bowl if you win the game. But you have an unbelievable opportunity as a team to knock Alabama out of all of its dreams, and as a coach, as an interim coach who would like to be the full-time head coach, to show what you're made of, to show no fear, to show confidence in your players. Go for it, score a touchdown, make a statement right before halftime. And what did DJ Durkin do? He sent Alex Etheridge out to kick a field goal, which he made, of course. It was 17-3. Now, you can say it was the right football decision at the time. And I will say, get over yourself. You have to take chances as an underdog on your home field in front of your home crowd against your biggest rival to snap a 5-year losing streak. It's not business as usual. It's not let's be conservative and not lose the game in the second quarter. It's damn the torpedoes, full speed ahead. And DJ Durkin passed on the idea of passing or running to score a touchdown. Instead, he kicked a field goal. That told you something about DJ Durkin. And I told you weeks ago that the impressive performance he put on in his first game as the interim coach at Vanderbilt, taking Vandy to overtime before losing 45-38, that was no reason to get excited and hire him as the full-time head coach. I also told you last week that I was reconsidering a little bit my opinion on DJ in a column I wrote that was posted on AL.com the day after Thanksgiving. I did not endorse him for the job at that time. Some of you have reading comprehension problems. Well, one of you in particular. I said I got a lot of feedback from inside the building that was very positive about DJ Durkin as a possible choice as the next head coach. I also said, if you read the column, I still believe John Sumrall from Tulane was the right guy for the job and the best choice available. We'll get to that subject a little bit later. But DJ Durkin showed me in that moment he didn't have the stuff that you need to be the Auburn head coach. And then in the fourth quarter, when Alabama now is on shaky ground, Alabama now is in familiar haunted house territory. Auburn has stormed back. Auburn has tied the game. Alabama has put together one of the weirdest, longest in terms of plays, shortest in terms of yardage drives you'll ever see to put themselves in position to take the lead. It is 4th and goal. I believe it was from the 2-yard line. Now, conventional wisdom, the coaching book, common sense says what? Kick the field goal. Take the lead. Trust your defense, which under Kane Womack has been the most consistent part of that team throughout the season. Yeah, they got dinged for a long play or two, a long pass or two by Auburn, but trust your defense. Kick the field goal, kick it off, shut them down, run out the clock. That's not what Kalen DeBoer did. For all of you who still labor under the delusion that he is this soft West Coast, left coast snowflake who's not tough enough for the SEC, he disabused you of that notion on Saturday night. Because in that 4th down situation, he didn't send out Connor Talty to kick the field goal, and Talty had already been 2 for 2. And this would have been a chip shot. No, he went for it. He called a play along with Ryan Grubb, and it was a pass play on a night when Ty Simpson was not at his sharpest, when the Auburn pass rush had given the Alabama offensive line all kinds of problems, hit Ty Simpson again and again and again. And no, we're not going to talk about the roughing the passer penalty that extended the last drive, the go-ahead drive for Alabama, because by rule, as the rules expert on the television broadcast told you, you cannot hit the quarterback below the knees. It's in the rule book. Check it out. But despite all of that, Kalen DeBoer put the game in the hands of Ty Simpson. And Ty Simpson put the ball in the hands of Isaiah Horton to give Alabama a 27-20 lead it would not relinquish. And I wish I could take credit for this, and I wish I could tell you who first said it so I could give them credit. I think I saw it on social media. The last 4 touchdowns scored by Alabama in Jordan-Hare Stadium were scored by a young man with the first name of Isaiah. Prophetic? Perhaps. But even after that, after Kalen DeBoer showed you that he absolutely belongs in the SEC, he absolutely is the right guy for the Alabama coaching job, that he has done what Nick Saban did. In his second year, he's gotten Alabama to the SEC championship game. Under very different circumstances, in a much more challenging SEC, simply by volume, if not by quality, Kalen DeBoer has done all that. So let's put to bed any questions about his fitness to be the Alabama coach. But even after that, to Auburn's credit, to Ashton Daniels' credit, to DJ Durkin's credit, they did not quit. They didn't accept their fate. They drove back down the field. And in a cruel twist of fate, at the end of a season that has twisted the knife in Auburn again and again, how did they lose the game? How did they end their last chance to beat Alabama? Cam Coleman, by all accounts, Auburn's best player, caught a pass, got hit, fumbled the ball, and Alabama recovered. On a night when a receiving room that Auburn would like you to believe, and many of us have believed, was the best in the country, couldn't catch a cold. The official stat said they dropped 5 balls. May have been more. But Cam Coleman, of all people, playing hurt, caught a pass in Alabama territory, deep in Alabama territory, tried to turn upfield, tried to make more out of the play. He got hit by Bray Hubbard, fumbled the ball, and Alabama recovered. And that was that. It's almost fitting in a way that Auburn's season on the field should end in that way, with their best player not making a play, having the defense make a play on him. And maybe that's a fitting epitaph for the Hugh Freeze era. The offense eventually, fatally failed. In another Iron Bowl, another opportunity to beat Alabama, another opportunity to wreck Alabama's season and put all the hot seat pressure on Kalen DeBoer for the next 365 days, gone. So now the question becomes, before we move on to the new administration in charge at Auburn, is it playoff or bust now for Alabama in Atlanta? Do they have to beat Georgia again, which they did back in September, to truly feel confident on Selection Sunday that they will be among the 12 teams in the college football playoff field? Could they be left out? Not only as a team that made it to the SEC championship game at 7-1 in the league, 10-2 overall, the number 1 seed, by the way, because Georgia, which is 11-1 overall and 7-1 in the SEC, well, they're the visitors in Atlanta because they lost to Alabama in Athens. Does Alabama have to do what it did every other time, the 4 previous times it played Georgia in the SEC championship game? Does it have to win? Does it have to show that the monkey on Kirby Smart's back is not Nick Saban, but the Crimson Helmet? There's a lot of conversation going on that Alabama, if it loses this game, does not deserve to be in the playoff field. I can't use all the words I would like to use on this podcast in response to that argument. And not having seen yet what the College Football Playoff Committee is going to do in its penultimate rankings on Tuesday night, I can't really go off on that group as we've done the last couple of weeks when they've done some egregious things, when Hunter Yurachek has said some outlandish things as the chairman. So I think I'm going to hold my tongue a bit on that. Will have something to say after Tuesday night's playoff rankings are released. But for now, Alabama has put itself in position to make the playoff. It's not a sure thing. Sadly, it's not a guarantee. And I will say this, I feel strongly, if Alabama loses the game, 1 point, a last-second Georgia field goal, whatever, and Alabama falls to 10-3 and Alabama does not make the college football playoff, bye-bye SEC championship game. I think a lot of people are ready to move on from what has been one of the greatest creations in SEC history, in college football history. And kudos to Roy Kramer, the former commissioner, for having the wisdom and the vision to see what that game could mean to the conference and to the sport. But if this goes wrong and getting to the championship game penalizes you, keeps you out of the college football playoff despite 10 wins, despite one of the best wins in the country already at Georgia, despite a number of other ranked wins, because you haven't run the ball consistently all season, because you haven't been quite as sharp after the most impressive 4-game stretch maybe ever in the middle of the season, 4 straight wins, 4 straight Saturdays, 4 straight ranked opponents, never been done before until Alabama did it this year. If that doesn't matter, if losing this game matters more, if who you lost to matters more than who you beat, Greg Sankey and company, they have to pull the plug, because that will tell you that the SEC championship game has outlived its usefulness. And I say that with a heavy heart because I've loved covering that game. I've covered a bunch of them, many of them including Alabama or Auburn, not all, but it was one of the creations that took the SEC to another level, that helped take it from a regional passion play to a national powerhouse. We'll see. All right, Alabama, you have work to do. Go get ready for Georgia. Auburn, you have work to do. You have a lot more work to do. But there's a new sheriff in town, Alex Golesh. Let's look at the Alex Golesh file. Born June 24, 1984. So that means he was born while Bo Jackson was going into his junior season at Auburn. So Alex is 41 years old, and in a biographical fact that makes him unique among all college football coaches, past, present, and likely future, his hometown is Moscow, Russia. Not Moscow, Idaho. He didn't grow up in the same state as Auburn's potato man, Brian Harsin, but Moscow, Russia. And of course, this is an amazing story. This goes well beyond football, well beyond sports. His family moved to the United States when Alex was 7 to escape the Soviet Union. Came here with virtually nothing but the clothes on their back and the belief in themselves. And that tells you that his family, Alex Golesh, has an incredible backstory. Again, unlike anything we've ever seen. And that certainly has helped shape him in a positive way. I don't know if that's going to help him beat Alabama and Georgia, but it ain't going to hurt. His family has faced far greater adversity than a 9-game losing streak to Georgia and a 6-game losing streak to Alabama. But as with all college football coaching hires, almost all, there are very few sure things. Nick Saban was a sure thing at Alabama. He wasn't a sure thing at LSU. He was a sure thing by the time he got to Alabama. There are positives and negatives. There are pros and cons that make you wonder if it's a hit or a miss. Now, I'm going to say this directly to some of you Auburn fans. You should have hope. Yes, on Sunday, I tweeted out a number of facts, true facts, about Alex Golesh's coaching career. Every one of them, true fact. Now, you perceived those facts to be negative. You perceived my opinion of the hire to be negative based on the facts that I chose to share on social media, in between making phone calls, receiving phone calls, sending texts, receiving texts about what went on over the weekend, while I was working on a column that did appear today in the Birmingham News, the online subscription publication, and linked on AL.com. I urge you to check it out because that's a far more detailed, lengthy, and thoughtful examination of this hire than you can achieve on social media. It's not my place to wave your flag. It's not my place to cheer for your team, your hire. That's your job. It is your job to have hope. And I hope you do have hope. I hope you do believe in Alex Golesh. I hope, and look, I say this and I feel like I might as well open the window over there and just shout it into the wind. I would love to see the 2026 Iron Bowl resemble the 2013 Iron Bowl, when a first-year Auburn coach took a program out of doom, gloom, and despair and got to the Iron Bowl as the number 4 team in the country against Alabama as the number 1 team in the country, and played what I called at the time, this was mine, the mother of all Iron Bowls. Because Alabama was undefeated and trying to win a 3rd straight national championship, which had never been done and still hasn't been done, because Auburn got in the way. Because Auburn ran for 294 yards. Because Auburn, in a coaching strategic move, maybe the greatest bit of strategery ever, when they decided to put Chris Davis back in case the 57-yard field goal came up short. As Rod Bramlett said, as only he could, I guess he can run it back. And he did, all the way to history and immortality. I hope next year's Iron Bowl has all of those things at stake for both teams. It's a better state. It's a better sport when that is the case. It's no fun writing about another losing season after another losing season after another one and another one and another one, DJ Khaled. It's not fun. It's more fun to cover games like the 2013 Iron Bowl. So I hope next year looks like that. Is it a guarantee? Of course not. There's no guarantee Alabama will be in the championship chase next year. But I hope it happens. But as with almost every coaching hire, there are pros and there are cons. And it's my place to point them out. And I don't need a lot of help about the pros, because you're out there looking for reasons to be excited about the new hire at your program. You're not as discerning, many of you, in looking at, well, hold on, here's why we should tap the brakes. Here's why you should be excited. Here's why you should throw a parade and why you have been dancing in the streets, some of you. South Florida was really bad when Alex Golesh got the head coaching job there. I mean, really bad. In the 3 years before he got there, and every Auburn fan has memorized these numbers already by heart. They were 4-29 overall. They were 1-22 in the American Conference. And in the 3 years that Alex Golesh was the head coach, they went 23-15 overall and 14-10 in the American. That is massive improvement. Now, to be fair, we have to point out that before he got the job, the American Conference included teams like Houston and Cincinnati and Central Florida and SMU, each of whom moved on before he arrived to go to a Power 4 conference. So the American that he competed in, and yes, that John Sumrall competed in, was not the same as the one that Jeff Scott, the USF coach who preceded Alex Golesh, competed in. But even so, incredible turnaround. And Alex Golesh deserves credit for that, and that should give you some hope as an Auburn fan. If he could do it there, this is a man who wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth in Moscow, Russia. He knows how to overcome adversity. He's done it in his life. He did it at South Florida, and that's what he's facing at Auburn. Because Auburn, you know this, you are a lot closer to the bottom of the SEC than you are to the top, and thank goodness for Arkansas. Or that might be you at the bottom. So that is a reason to be excited. That's a pro. His offensive resume is legit. I mean, look at this year. South Florida. This is all football bowl subdivision teams. The Bulls, number 2 in total offense in the country, number 4 in scoring offense. That's impressive. Look at Byron Brown, their quarterback. What is he, 6'3", 231? I watched most of the Florida game early in the year. He's an SEC player. Now, whether he comes to Auburn, whether he's the starting quarterback next year, that's something for Alex Golesh and his staff to decide, but it's an intriguing possibility. He became the 12th, I think this is right, the 12th quarterback in FBS history to throw for 3,000 yards in a season and run for 1,000 yards in a season. He is a true dual threat. And if he decides to follow Alex Golesh to the Plains, that will be even more reason to get excited. It also will create a quarterback competition, perhaps, maybe a controversy, but we're getting way ahead of ourselves. But all of those reasons are reasons to get excited about Alex Golesh if you're an Auburn fan. Oh, and by the way, and we have to say this, and I know it's become almost comical at this point. He does have a win over Alabama. He was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee under Josh Heupel in 2022 when the Vols beat the Tide, ended that long losing streak in the series on the third Saturday in October, 52-49. That was the night you'll remember. They tore down the goalposts. They carried him out of the stadium. They took him down to the river, and they threw him in the river. A memorable night in Tennessee football history. So he knows what it means to beat Alabama. Now, he was the coordinator. He was not the head coach. And he was also, and we should say this, I don't know what this means. And he talked about it in his introductory press conference in Auburn today. It's a group effort. Calling plays, running an offense is more of a group effort than a lot of people want to understand or acknowledge. When he was the offensive coordinator at Tennessee, he worked for a head coach in Josh Heupel, who is an offensive guru of his own. You know, with the wide splits and spreading the field, throwing the ball vertically, spreading the field horizontally, running a tempo offense. That scares a lot of defenses, scares a lot of defensive coordinators. I also might add, it scares a lot of defensive coordinators when they start thinking about working for a head coach with that philosophy. Because your numbers are not going to be pretty as a defensive coordinator when your offense is playing that way. Now, I don't know. As of this moment, at his press conference today, Alex Golesh was asked, of course, about whether he would retain DJ Durkin. He didn't really answer the question because he doesn't have an answer to the question yet. He said they're working through it. He never mentioned Durkin's name. Durkin's name was in the question. It never appeared in his answer. And my understanding from my sources is that Durkin might not be thrilled at the idea of being the defensive coordinator for a tempo offensive head coach. Doesn't mean he won't. We don't have an answer as of this taping. Hopefully we will very soon. Golesh suggested 24 to 48 hours because you can't wait too long. Durkin has to decide what he wants to do, and then if he says no and looks for opportunities elsewhere, perhaps as a head coach, there are American Conference jobs available, then we'll see. But Golesh is going to need a defensive coordinator in tow fairly soon, with signing day coming up this week. High school signing day, that is. High school signing period. All right. Now, but it's not all seashells and balloons. There are cons. There are reasons to tap the brakes. There are reasons to wonder. Alex Golesh, in his 3 years as the head coach of South Florida, never made it to the American Championship game. Meanwhile, John Sumrall, and this is one of the reasons why he was my choice. If I were John Cohen, if I were the Auburn athletic director, and I had to hire a head coach at this point in time, given everything that I know, based on the people that I know who know John Sumrall well, I would have gone after him. I would have hired him. I would have done what it took to hire him. Instead, he decided to go to Florida. And Alex Golesh, instead of going to Arkansas, as was reported prematurely last week, he decided he would rather be at Auburn, which again shows you some of his wisdom. Auburn, Arkansas, it's not a choice, as Gus Malzahn demonstrated in 2017 when he stayed with Auburn and got a ridiculously large contract extension with a ridiculously large buyout that Auburn had to pay a few years later. So, the fact that Alex Golesh has not gotten a team to a conference championship game in the American, slight concern. This is interesting, and I really don't know what this means, but it stood out to me in doing my research on Alex Golesh. He's been a college football coach. Now, I'm not counting his days as a student assistant or a graduate assistant, but when he started as a full-time assistant coach, he's been at Illinois, he's been at Iowa State, he's been at Toledo, he's been at Central Florida, he's been at Tennessee, and he's been at South Florida. 17 years as either a position coach, a coordinator, or a head coach. In those 17 years, he has never been a part of a team that played in a conference championship game. Now, you can explain some of that away because those weren't the greatest jobs in the world. Those weren't the most successful programs in the world. They were typically rebuilding jobs at every stop. And he wasn't the head coach, but for 3 of those 17 years. But gives me a little bit of pause. He's never been part of a conference championship game. He's also in those 17 years, this is the one that really blew me away. In those 17 years, do you know how many years the team that he's been a part of won 10 or more games? Take a guess. Once. Once out of 17 years has he been part of a team that won 10 or more games. Now, asterisk, this South Florida team is 9-3. They go win a bowl game. Without him, they would be 10-3. But still, doesn't change the fact, 17 years, 1 10-win season. And that was, again, in 2022 at Tennessee when he was the offensive coordinator under Josh Heupel, and they won 11 games. Here's something I think that is a little more relevant and perhaps a little more telling. 4 coaches from the American Conference have gotten Power 4 jobs. But Eric Morris is going to, where's he going? Oklahoma State from North Texas. But 3 of those American Conference coaches on Sunday all were hired by Southeastern Conference football programs. Alex Golesh by Auburn, John Summerall by Florida, and Ryan Silverfield from Memphis by Arkansas. So in the last 3 years, in the time, now Summerall was only at Tulane for 2 years, and he is going to coach them in the American Conference Championship game on Friday night, which, again, is his 4th year as a head coach and the 4th time he's led a team to a conference championship game. Twice at Troy, twice at Tulane. That means something. But head-to-head, since those 3 have been in the American, now Silverfield was at Memphis the longest. He was there 6 years. Silverfield is 3-0 with Memphis against Alex Golesh at South Florida. They played 3 times, and the Tigers beat the Bulls all 3 times. Golesh in South Florida played Summerall and Tulane only once. Last year, not this year, excuse me, and Tulane won the game. So, that means head-to-head, Alex Golesh was 0-4 against 2 of the other new coaches coming into the SEC. What does that mean? Does it mean anything? It means a little something. And I will say this too, and this is something that people need to understand. Just as in the SEC, all programs are not created equal. They don't bring in the same amount of revenue. They don't rack up the same amount of expenses. There's a difference between Texas and Texas A&M and Mississippi State and Arkansas, financially speaking. In the American Conference, that gap is rather large. And Alex Golesh was fortunate in that when he arrived at South Florida, that school had already made a conscious decision to pump more money into its athletic department and more money into its football program. According to the Knight Newhouse database, I think that I got that right. I hope I got that phrase correct or that source correct. This is a legitimate source. They compile college athletic spending. And according to that group, South Florida in 2024, the last year for which figures are available, as they say, South Florida spent $31 million on its football program, far more than any of the other public institutions whose numbers were shared in that database. Private schools don't have to share those numbers. So we don't know exactly what Tulane's pumping into football. It's not pennies, I can tell you that. But the gap between, say, South Florida and UAB, which as of this moment is still looking for a head coach, I have a feeling I know some of the reasons for the long waiting period. What is it, 50 days or so now since they fired Trent Dilfer? It's hard to hire a coach when people keep saying no. When the reputation of your athletic director has gotten rammed. I'll just say that. But kudos to the Blazers because they won their last game. They won on the road on Saturday. Their first road victory since Bryant Vincent was the head coach in 2022. So kudos to Alex Mortensen. He did a far better job than people realize. He beat Memphis and Ryan Silverfield in his first game as the interim head coach, and he won a road game in his last game as the interim head coach. And you know what? I had a veteran coach who's been in a lot of different leagues at a lot of different programs, and he understands the lay of the land at UAB as well. He texted me yesterday and said, why wouldn't UAB hire Alex Mortensen as head coach going forward? Given the job he's done, given their budgetary restraints, given the reputation of the athletic director in the industry, which is what's below bottom? Subterranean, perhaps? That given all those circumstances, that Alex Mortensen might be the right guy to hire for that job. I don't know if that's true. He certainly has done a fine job as the interim, and he has helped clean up a lot of the mess that Trent Dilfer left behind. Not completely, as we know, based on what happened a week ago. We're not going to relitigate that. But we'll see what UAB does. But the American, again, big gap in spending, and South Florida was right at the top of the heap in spending. And look, you can throw a lot of money at a problem and not solve the problem. So Alex Golish and that organization made great use of those funds. And they'll need to do the same. And he's bringing a bunch of people with him in his administration and on his staff to Auburn, including most enjoyably Cody Burns. If you don't like Cody Burns, you don't like people. If you've ever been around him, going back to when he was an Auburn player and he was part of that national championship team, and he shifted from quarterback to wide receiver when a guy named Cam Newton showed up and fittingly caught a touchdown pass in the national championship victory over Oregon from Cam. Cody Burns is going to be back. He's going to be assistant or associate head coach. Alex Golish, at his introductory press conference, just raved about Cody Burns, which tells me he's gotten to know Cody Burns because Cody Burns has been on his staff in South Florida. So again, that's another positive for Alex Golish. Okay. There's not much more we can say about Alex Golish. Time will tell whether he was the right choice. I think he has potential that he has to fulfill. I think John Summerall will be more successful at Florida than Alex Golish is at Auburn. That's my opinion based on my knowledge of the game, my experience, my relationships with people who know both of them. Doesn't mean they both can't be successful. It's not mutually exclusive. But I think Summerall would have been, again, in this cycle, the best hire for Auburn. Maybe Alex Golish will prove me wrong. It's happened before. I'm not batting 1,000. Neither are any of you when it comes to judging coaching hires. And speaking of that subject, we can't get out of here today without talking about the guy who got out of Oxford, Mississippi on Sunday. I think at this point, many of you know what I think about Lane Kiffin. It's not positive. And what he did in walking out on an Ole Miss team that just enjoyed the best regular season in school history, going 11-1, only lost to Georgia in a close game in which Georgia had to come from behind. Walking out on an Ole Miss team that is headed to the college football playoff for the first time. Walking out on a team that he put together, that he coached, that he encouraged, that he motivated, that he talked to about commitment and putting the team before self and finishing the drill and going the distance. All lies. This is not Tim Brando, who made this ridiculous comparison. Nick Saban leaving LSU for the Miami Dolphins on steroids. That is a completely invalid analogy that bears no resemblance to the truth. And if Lane Kiffin is trying to be Nick Saban, he's failing miserably. First of all, on the field, where he's never won a conference championship at the Power 4 level. Yes, he did win Conference USA at Florida Atlantic. We would never downplay that accomplishment because we know what it meant when UAB did it under Bill Clark. But when Nick Saban, and I can speak on this with some authority, when Nick Saban was coaching the Miami Dolphins in 2006, and initial inquiries were made from people close to the University of Alabama to gauge his interest in returning to the college game to coach the Crimson Tide. Nick Saban was interested from the start. He was not sold from the beginning, but he made one thing clear through his representatives. He would not talk to Alabama until the Miami Dolphins season was over. And he stuck to that word. It's one of the reasons that some Alabama decision makers got nervous. They worried, what if we wait till after the NFL season and he changes his mind and says no? Where are we then? So that led to the Rich Rodriguez gambit. I've told you this story many times. I reported it live as it was happening. Alabama went right back to Saban after Rodriguez said no. And he said to his representative, they wouldn't be in this mess if they'd listened to me in the first place. And he told his representative, get me the effing job. Which is what happened. And though, yes, Nick Saban lied publicly when he said, I guess I have to say it, I'm not going to be the Alabama coach. He didn't handle that situation very well. But he never wavered. He never contemplated walking away from his team until his season was done. And that Miami team had a losing record. Ended up with a losing record. That Miami team didn't make the playoffs. That Miami team had no shot to go win a Super Bowl. But Nick Saban, as an adult, as someone who doesn't spout cliches, motivational sayings, Bible verses, blithely, without understanding their meaning, without living up to them, or trying to at least, he didn't walk out. He finished the job. So what Lane Kiffin is doing, and make no mistake, despite what every other ESPN personality under the sun will tell you, there is no way in hell or heaven or on God's green earth that Ole Miss could, would, or should have allowed Lane Kiffin to coach out the season at Ole Miss after accepting the LSU job. This is not apples to apples with John Sumrall at Tulane accepting the Florida job, but staying with Tulane at least through the American Championship game on Friday. And if they make the playoff, John Sumrall will coach Tulane in the playoff. They are not in the same conference. They are not on the same level. They are not bitter historical rivals the way Ole Miss and LSU are. They are not going to play every year the way Ole Miss and LSU will going forward as permanent rivals under the new 9-game SEC conference schedule. So Lane Kiffin did what Lane Kiffin does. And shame on every one of you in the media who pumped this fantasy, this fallacy that Lane Kiffin was a changed man. He's lost weight. He does hot yoga. He stopped drinking. He cares about his family. He puts his family first. His whole family moved to Oxford. His brother lives there. His children, 2 of his children live there. His son is a quarterback at that local high school team. Are you that gullible? Are you that easily played? Because that's what Lane Kiffin is. He's a player. And he played everyone. He played Auburn 3 years ago. Auburn thought he was coming. He loved the attention. Tanked the Ole Miss season. But he did stay at Ole Miss for a rather sizable raise. And then this time around, he played Ryan McGee from ESPN. Outstanding journalist. Does great work. But that E60, The Many Lives of Lane Kiffin, was, if they enter it for any awards, I hope it's in the category of fiction. Because there were many lies detected coming out of the mouth of Lane Kiffin. He played Florida. Florida thought he was coming. Florida made a huge offer, which Buddy Martin and the folks at Gatorbait Media, who are a big part of the Sidelines.live network that you can see this podcast on, they didn't, now, just to be clear, they didn't report that he had accepted or was coming, but they reported that Florida had made him its chief target, and they had put a ridiculously large offer in front of him. But he played Florida. Despite the family ties, despite his ex-wife's father, John Reeves, being a legendary Florida quarterback, despite her having gone to, I think she went to Florida. Maybe she grew up in Gainesville. I don't remember all the details. But there were certainly strong family ties there. Lane Kiffin's a family guy. Pull this leg and it plays Jingle Bells. Worst of all, in the end, Lane Kiffin played Ole Miss. Tried to play them, but Keith Carter was smarter. Keith Carter understood that there was no way he could allow Lane Kiffin to coach his team, coach Ole Miss, in the playoff, be around those players for another 3 weeks to a month and a half, and knowing Lane Kiffin talked to them about going with him to LSU the whole time. He couldn't allow that. A Mississippi man should coach Mississippi's team, to quote the immortal Bo Schembechler, who faced this situation with his basketball coach back in 1989. And I'm going to tell you what, there are going to be more Ole Miss fans during this playoff. And Pete Golding, there is not a person alive on the face of this earth, certainly not in the state of Alabama, certainly not in the Crimson Tide Nation, that believed for 1 second that they would see Pete Golding as a head coach in the SEC. While he was at Alabama working for Nick Saban, because Nick Saban knew what kind of a recruiter he is, or after Golding left to go work for Lane Kiffin in Oxford. I don't think anyone envisioned him as a head coach in this conference. But so many people are going to be cheering for him in the playoff. And if this committee keeps Ole Miss out of the playoff, because Lane Kiffin won't be there, because he's taking Charlie Weis Jr., his offensive coordinator, with him, and shame on him for abandoning this Ole Miss team too. If that committee keeps this 11-1 team out of the playoff, we riot. Okay, that sounds good. I don't know what that means in practical terms, but it will be a travesty. And maybe, if this weren't bad enough, and Lane Kiffin playing the victim, and Marty Smith did his best, hanging around Oxford, getting that last interview with Lane Kiffin on ESPN on Sunday, and hearing Lane Kiffin do what he does best, one of the things he does best besides con people, and that's play the victim. And Marty asked good questions. He asked the right questions. He didn't get straight answers because Lane Kiffin doesn't give straight, honest answers. He's incapable. Al Davis was right all those years ago with the Raiders when he judged the character of Lane Kiffin to be lacking. And during that entire interview, Lane Kiffin, he was physically shifty, bouncing back and forth from one foot to the other. Showed not 1 ounce of joy at taking the LSU job. Didn't give one reasonable explanation for taking the LSU job. Instead, he didn't even take responsibility for taking the LSU job. You know what he did? If you saw it, you know. He said he talked to his mentors, Pete Carroll and Nick Saban. Now, to his credit, he didn't say Nick Saban told him to take the LSU job, because I think Nick Saban is cagier than that, even though he might have suggested it or leaned in that direction. But he did say that Pete Carroll said he should go. And that Pete Carroll said, this may be the most egregious of all. Pete Carroll, according to Lane Kiffin, told Lane that Lane's late father, Monty Kiffin, would have wanted him to go to LSU. So, Lane Kiffin didn't make this. Oh, and the worst part, then he said God told him to go. I guess God's an LSU fan now. You couldn't see through him any more clearly if he were a ghost. And in perhaps one last absurd and obscene aspect to all of this, the reporting came out today from the Advocate in Baton Rouge, very good reporting, that LSU is going to pay Lane Kiffin his playoff bonus that he would have received at Ole Miss had he stayed for every game they win in the playoff. However far they go. Whatever the bonus would be, LSU is going to pay it. And I have one thing to say to that, to the people at LSU. Have you no sense of decency, sir? Have you no sense of decency? I already know the answer to that question, and so do you. Of course you don't, LSU, because you hired Lane Kiffin. That's going to do it for me for today. I'm Kevin Skarbinski. This is Scarbo Knows. Thank you so much for watching. We've gone long, but we had so much to deal with, so much to talk about. Reasons to be excited at Alabama, reasons to be excited about Auburn. More big football to come this weekend. We'll be here writing about it, talking about it. I hope you'll follow. Thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great day. Stay tuned and hear a word from our sponsor, Money Management Services. See you.
Since 1992, Money Management Services in Birmingham has provided individuals and business owners with trusted, fee-only financial advice. We're more than advisors, we're your financial family. From retirement planning to tax strategies and estate planning, our team builds personalized wealth management plans tailored to your life. At Money Management Services, we treat you like family, because when you walk through our doors, you become part of ours.